A man, humiliated in front of an entire company, stands trembling as the billionaire CEO publicly fires him. But when he speaks just 4 words, the room goes dead silent. What happens next will leave you breathless. Subscribe now, hit like, and turn on notifications, because this story will change how you see resilience forever. The Invisible Man. The Preston Tower loomed over downtown Chicago like a monument of power, its glass and steel facade reflecting the cold glow of the city lights. Inside, the air smelled of expensive leather and freshly brewed espresso, a world where fortunes were made with the stroke of a pen. But in the shadows of that gleaming empire, unseen and unheard, moved Mark Rios. Mark was a ghost in his own life, a 38-year-old janitor who worked the overnight shift, mopping floors and emptying trash bins while the executives slept in their penthouse apartments. His hands were rough from years of labor, his back permanently sore, but he never complained. He couldn't afford to, not when every dollar he earned went toward keeping his 9-year-old daughter, Lily, alive. Lily had been born with a rare heart condition, one that required surgeries, medications, and constant monitoring. The medical bills were a crushing weight, but Mark carried them without flinching. He had to. She was all he had left. Tonight, like every night, he moved silently through the halls, his mop gliding over the marble floors that the Preston executives never even glanced at. He knew their routines, when they left, when they arrived, which offices were occupied late into the night. He had learned to navigate their world without being noticed. But tonight was different. As he emptied the trash bin in the executive suite, he heard voices. Nathaniel Preston, the billionaire CEO whose name adorned the building, was still in his office. Mark hesitated. He wasn't supposed to be here when the higher-ups were around, but the conversation caught his ear. "Cut the entire cleaning staff," Nathaniel said, his voice sharp, unfeeling. "Outsource it. Cheaper labor, no benefits. We'll save millions." Mark's breath hitched. 30 people, 30 families. His job, his insurance, Lily's treatments. His hands trembled as he slowly backed away. But in his shock, his elbow knocked against a mop bucket. It tipped with a deafening clatter, water splashing across the polished floor, and Nathaniel Preston's $10,000 Italian loafers. Time stopped. Mark looked up, his heart pounding. Nathaniel stood there, his tailored suit immaculate, his expression unreadable. The 2 men locked eyes, one who had everything, and one who stood to lose it all. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then Nathaniel's lip curled just slightly. "You," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "What's your name?" Mark swallowed hard. He knew, in that instant, that his life was about to change forever. And he was right. The execution. Mark's throat tightened as Nathaniel Preston's cold gaze bore into him. The CEO's polished shoes were now soaked, his expression unreadable, but the tension in the air was suffocating. The other executives in the room had gone silent, watching the scene unfold like spectators at a trial. "Your name," Nathaniel repeated, his voice measured but edged with something dangerous. "Mark Rios," Mark answered, forcing his voice steady. He gripped the mop handle like a lifeline, his knuckles turning white. Nathaniel didn't blink. "Mark Rios," he echoed, as if testing the weight of the name. Then, without warning, he turned to his assistant. "Get security. He's done." A murmur rippled through the room. Mark's stomach dropped. "Fired." Just like that. The assistant hesitated. "Sir, maybe we should just—" "Now!" Nathaniel snapped. Mark's mind raced. He thought of Lily, her smile, the way she clung to him when he tucked her in at night. He thought of the medical bills piling up, the insurance that would vanish the second he walked out those doors. Panic clawed at his chest, but he forced it down. Begging wouldn't help. Not with a man like Nathaniel Preston. Security arrived within minutes, their faces grim, but indifferent. One of them gripped Mark's arm. "Come on, let's go." Mark yanked free. "I can walk." Nathaniel watched, arms crossed, as Mark was escorted out of the executive suite. But this wasn't the end. The next morning, a public humiliation. Mark had hoped, foolishly, that his termination would be quiet. A paperwork shuffle, a final paycheck. But Nathaniel Preston didn't do things quietly. At 9 a.m., the entire Preston Tower staff was called into the grand lobby for an urgent company announcement. Mark, still in shock from the night before, had come to collect his last check. He stood at the back, unnoticed, until Nathaniel took the podium. The CEO's voice boomed through the speakers. Last night, an employee demonstrated the kind of carelessness we do not tolerate at Preston Holdings. A screen flickered to life behind him. Security footage of Mark knocking over the mop bucket. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. This man, Nathaniel continued, pointing at the screen, has been terminated. Let this be a lesson to all of you. Excellence is not optional. Mark's face burned. He was being made an example, a warning to anyone who dared step out of line. His hands clenched at his sides. He should leave. He should just walk away. But then Nathaniel smirked. Some people are meant to stay invisible. Something inside Mark snapped. A broken, disbelieving laugh escaped him. The sound cut through the silence like glass. Heads turned. Nathaniel's gaze locked onto him, his smirk fading. "You're right," Mark said, his voice carrying across the room. "Carelessness does have consequences." He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, and Nathaniel's own voice echoed through the lobby. "Cut the entire cleaning staff. Outsource it. Cheaper labor, no benefits." The crowd erupted. Gasps, murmurs, angry shouts. Nathaniel's face went pale. Mark hadn't just recorded the moment his life fell apart. He'd recorded the moment he fought back. And the internet was about to hear it too. The viral storm. Mark's hands trembled as he stepped out of Preston Tower, the morning sun glaring down like an unwelcome spotlight. The weight of what he'd just done pressed against his chest, each breath feeling tighter than the last. He had no plan, no next move, just a recording burning a hole in his pocket, and the echo of Nathaniel Preston's fury ringing in his ears. He barely remembered the walk to the subway, the faces of his former co-workers, some sympathetic, others avoiding his gaze, flashed in his mind. The cleaners, the security guards, the cafeteria staff, they all knew now. Their jobs were on the chopping block too. His phone buzzed incessantly in his pocket. Unknown numbers. Social media notifications. He ignored them, shoving his hands deeper into his jacket. Right now, all he wanted was to see Lily, to hug her and pretend, just for a moment, that the world wasn't crumbling around them. The clip, that broke the internet. Elena Torres, a junior marketing associate at Preston Holdings, had been in the crowd that morning. She watched Nathaniel humiliate Mark, her stomach twisting with disgust. When Mark played that recording, she hadn't thought. She just acted. Her phone was out, recording before she even realized what she was doing. The video was shaky, but the audio was crystal clear. Nathaniel's voice, cold and calculating, laying out his plan to slash jobs. Mark's defiance. The crowd's outrage. She uploaded it with a simple caption. "This is how Preston Holdings treats the people who keep their towers clean. Share this. Hashtag Preston Greed." Then she held her breath and hit post. The storm hits. By the time Mark reached his tiny apartment, the video had already been shared thousands of times. Hashtags multiplied like wildfire. Hashtag Preston Greed. Hashtag Stand with Mark. Hashtag Cleaners Deserve Better. His phone exploded. Texts, calls, social media tags. Reporters. Former coworkers. Strangers. "Mark, this is Gina from Channel 7 News. We want to interview you." "Dude, you're a hero. My mom was a cleaner." "This is BS." "Mark Rios. I'm with the Chicago Tribune. Can you confirm?" He silenced his phone and collapsed onto the couch, pressing his palms against his eyes. What had he done? Lily padded into the room, her favorite stuffed rabbit clutched in one hand. "Daddy, why are you home so early?" Mark forced a smile, pulling her into his lap. "Just a weird day at work, Mija." She studied his face with those big, knowing eyes. "You look sad." He kissed the top of her head. "I'm okay. Promise." But the phone kept ringing. Nathaniel's counterattack. Across town, Nathaniel Preston slammed his office door shut, his polished facade cracking. His PR team was in full damage control, but the storm was spreading too fast. "Get legal on the line," he snarled at his assistant. "I want that recording erased." and find out who filmed that damn video. His phone buzzed. A board member. Then another. Then his father, the company's founder. Nathaniel ignored them all. There was only one solution. Silence Mark Rios for good. A knock at the door. Mark jumped at the sharp rap on his apartment door. Had Nathaniel sent someone? The police? He peered through the peephole and froze. A woman in a sharp blazer stood there, a cameraman behind her. The Channel 7 News logo was emblazoned on her microphone. "Mr. Rios," she called, "we'd love to hear your side of the story." Lily tugged his sleeve. "Daddy? Who's that?" Mark's pulse pounded. This was it, no turning back. He took a deep breath and opened the door. The offer. Mark's apartment felt smaller than ever as the news crew set up their camera in his cramped living room. The reporter, a polished woman named Diane Carter, gave him an encouraging smile while her cameraman adjusted the lighting. Lily watched wide-eyed from the hallway, clutching her stuffed rabbit like a shield against the strange adults invading their space. "Just be honest," Diane said softly. "Tell your story. That's all people want to hear." Mark nodded, his throat dry. He had never been on TV before. The only time he'd ever seen himself on camera was in home videos with Lily. Now, his face would be broadcast across Chicago, maybe even further. The red light on the camera blinked to life. "Mr. Rios," Diane began, her tone shifting into professional warmth. "You become an overnight symbol of the working class standing up to corporate greed. Can you tell us what really happened at Preston Tower?" Mark hesitated. He could still see Nathaniel's cold stare, hear the way his voice had dripped with disdain when he called Mark invisible. So he told the truth. He spoke about working nights, about scrubbing floors no one noticed until they were dirty. He talked about Lily, about the medical bills that kept him awake even after exhausting shifts. And when he described the moment Nathaniel fired him, not just privately, but publicly, like some kind of lesson, his voice didn't shake. It burned. The interview lasted 20 minutes. By the time Diane thanked him and packed up her crew, Mark's hands had stopped trembling. The aftermath? He didn't expect much. Maybe a few more shares. Maybe a local news cycle's worth of attention before the world moved on. But by evening, his phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Donations, small ones, large ones, pouring in from strangers with messages that made his eyes sting. For Lily's surgery, get her the best care. From one single dad to another, stay strong. You gave my mom the courage to quit her job at Preston. Thank you. The numbers climbed higher than Mark had ever dreamed of seeing in his bank account. Enough for Lily's next surgery. Enough, maybe, to breathe the first time in years. Then came the email. Legal letterhead. Preston Holdings. You are hereby ordered to cease dissemination of unlawfully obtained recordings. Failure to comply will result in immediate legal action. Mark's stomach dropped. They were coming for him. Nathaniel's move. Nathaniel Preston didn't lose. Not in business, not in politics, not in life. And certainly not to some janitor with a smartphone. His lawyers had assured him the recording was legally dubious. The PR team was spinning it as a violation of privacy. The board, while nervous, would fall in line. They always did. But the donations? The public sympathy? That was a problem. So Nathaniel did what he did best. He adapted. The knock at the door. Mark was putting Lily to bed when the pounding started. Not the polite tap of a reporter. This was sharp, insistent. His blood ran cold. Had Nathaniel sent the police? Lawyers? He crept to the door, peering through the peephole. Nathaniel Preston stood in the hallway. Alone. Mark's fingers hovered over the deadbolt. Every instinct screamed not to open it. But curiosity, or maybe exhaustion, won out. The door creaked open. Nathaniel looked different under the flickering hallway light. No suit jacket, no entourage. Just a man in a wrinkled dress shirt. His usual arrogance dulled by something Mark couldn't name. "We need to talk," Nathaniel said. Mark didn't move. "You fired me. You humiliated me. What's left to say?" Nathaniel's jaw tightened. "Name your price." A beat of silence. "What?" "The recording. The interviews. All of it." Nathaniel reached into his pocket and pulled out a checkbook. "Tell me what it'll take to make this go away." Mark stared at him. The arrogance was breathtaking. Did Nathaniel really think everything had a price? Then again, he looked at Lily's bedroom door, at the stack of medical bills on the counter. "I want my job back," Mark said slowly, "with benefits. For me and every cleaner in your buildings." Nathaniel scoffed. "Or what?" Mark smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Or I take the next video straight to the Wall Street Journal." For the first time, Nathaniel Preston looked uncertain. The ripple, the air in Mark's apartment felt different the next morning, lighter, as if the walls themselves had exhaled after years of tension. Sunlight streamed through the thin curtains, painting warm stripes across the kitchen table, where Lily sat coloring her hospital paperwork replaced by bright crayons and childish doodles. Mark stared at the signed agreement in his hands, still not quite believing it was real. Nathaniel Preston had folded. Not gracefully, not kindly, but he'd folded. The cleaners of Preston Tower would keep their jobs. They'd receive proper benefits. And Mark? He wasn't just rehired. He'd been promoted to head of facilities, with a salary that made his hand shake when he saw the number. His phone buzzed with another notification. Another donation to Lily's medical fund. Another message of support. The internet had crowned him an unlikely hero, the janitor who stood up to a billionaire and won. But as he scrolled through the endless stream of encouragement, a single email made his blood run cold. "Mr. Rios, while we appreciate your advocacy, please remember this agreement includes a strict non-disclosure clause. Further public statements will result in immediate termination and legal action." Nathaniel's signature loomed at the bottom like a threat. Mark deleted it. He wouldn't be silenced, not completely. But for now, he had what he needed. 1 month later, the changes at Preston Tower were small but seismic. Cleaners no longer scurried through back hallways. They walked with their heads high, their new ID badges gleaming under the lobby lights. The break room, once reserved for executives, now had a coffee machine anyone could use. Mark's old mop and bucket were gone, replaced by an office with his name on the door. He still arrived early, though, not to scrub floors, but to check on his team, to make sure promises were being kept. Nathaniel barely acknowledged him in the halls, but that was fine. The silence between them spoke volumes. The unexpected victory. Lily's surgery date was set. The best pediatric cardiologist in Chicago will be handling her case. Her medical bills fully covered between the donations and Mark's new insurance. That night, as he tucked her into bed, she grabbed his hand with surprising strength. "Daddy," she whispered, "are the bad days over?" Mark kissed her forehead, his throat tight. "Not all of them, Meja, but the really hard ones? Yeah, I think they might be." The shadow. Nathaniel Preston stood at his penthouse window, staring down at the city that had once feared him. The news outlets had moved on to fresher scandals, but the damage was done. His father's disapproving calls still rang in his ears. The board's newfound concerns about his leadership style. On his desk, a folder sat open. Surveillance photos. Mark dropping Lily off at school. Mark laughing with his team. Nathaniel closed the folder slowly. This wasn't over. The legacy. Weeks turned into months. The hashtag Preston Greed hashtag faded, but the ripple effects didn't. Other janitors in other cities began speaking up. Unions formed. Laws were introduced. Mark kept his head down, working quietly to make real change where it mattered, in the lives of the people who cleaned up after the world. And every morning, without fail, he'd pass Nathaniel in the hallway. They never spoke, but the look in Nathaniel's eyes said everything. You were supposed to stay invisible. This story proves one voice can change everything, but only if we're brave enough to use it. Who inspires you to speak up? Tag them in the comments. Smash that like button if you believe in standing up for what's right. And subscribe for more real-life stories of courage. Because the next Mark Rios, he might be watching this right now.